Hi there, I'm Dr. Lochte. I'm a psychiatrist currently practicing in Los Angeles. Today I'd like to talk with you about anxiety and depression. These issues are very common, difficult to treat, and have a huge impact on quality of life. What I've noticed is that a lot of the advice on YouTube about these issues is well-intentioned, but only focuses on the superficial level. If you're someone who's already tried exercising, eating healthy, finding new hobbies, maybe you've even started taking medications, but you still feel this persistent anxiety and depression, then you might not be addressing the roots of these symptoms. In this video, I'd like to describe the psychological model that I use in my own practice to dive in and address the roots of depression and anxiety in my patients. I'll give you some signs to watch for to see if this model fits your situation, as well as some tools you can apply to start feeling better. This model is very basic, but it can take a lifetime to master. I'll present my version of this topic, but this isn't something that I invented. At its core, this is a very old framework that's existed since the earliest days of psychoanalysis and even has parallels in ancient and religious texts. So to start, imagine an upside-down triangle, with the first corner labeled defenses, the second corner labeled anxiety, and the bottom corner labeled feeling. Let's start with the defense corner. Defenses are a large umbrella term used to describe any states or behaviors that are used to protect your internal state. This can be conscious defenses like addictions or procrastination, but they can also be subconscious defenses like fatigue, apathy, confusion, helplessness, even thoughts of hurting yourself. Now we come into this world as babies with very few defenses. You can experience this when you look in a baby's eyes and you can just feel that intense sensation that you're there with another being. From an early age, you start to add defenses like armor every single time you get hurt. The biggest chunks of this armor are designed around the attachment issues related to your family, as well as traumatic events from your past. For a vulnerable toddler, developing these defenses feels like a matter of survival. These defenses can be immature, like throwing a tantrum, we call this acting out, or denial, just saying that something didn't happen. But you can also have mature defenses, like when you take anger and you channel it into something like sports. We call that sublimation, or thinking over your problems over and over. We call that intellectualizing. In general, a lot of the advice on YouTube and even certain forms of therapy focus around building up mature defenses. This includes going to the gym, making money, focusing on self-improvement, logical thinking, and powering through difficult emotions. This structure is great and an important skill set to build up, especially when you're sort of stuck in a behavioral rut. However, in the long terms, this doesn't treat the roots of the issues and can result in an overly intellectualized, hyper-individualized tunnel vision. This can blind people to the importance of the internal world, emotional vulnerability, and connections to other people. People that are lost in mature defense mechanisms oftentimes charge toward success, but the depression and anxiety are never actually addressed. Life begins to feel robotic, meaningless, and it becomes more and more difficult to feel emotionally connected to yourself and other people. So how can you prevent yourself from getting into this situation? Well, we'll find out when we explore the other corners of the triangle. Moving on to the anxiety corner of the triangle, anxiety isn't as complicated as the defense corner. However, it's probably the most unpleasant corner to live in. Anxiety is essentially the most intolerable corner to be in, and it's hard to separate from defenses because the defenses oftentimes activate very quickly to soothe the anxiety. You just do not want to be in that position. You likely can relate to this feeling intuitively, but I think of it as the feeling of your mind being pulled in two different directions. It's when you're on the top of a high dive, but you just can't bring yourself to jump off. Part of you wants to run down the diving board, but part of you also doesn't want to give up. This is when you're in anxiety. Anxiety can often feel like a running dialogue of worries, to-do lists, and harsh self-criticism. When you're trying to start that paper and you tell yourself just one more video, that's defenses coming in to soothe that anxiety. Now, anxiety is something that you can and should learn to tolerate. This is something that meditation can help with immensely. You sit with boredom, thought, tension, stress, but you learn not to react. This is a critical skill to build, especially for people with ADHD-type symptoms. If you can start to sit with anxiety and really pay attention, you might also start to notice that right before you experience a surge of anxiety, and even during an anxiety episode, you're actually experiencing a subtle emotional feeling at the core of all these other sensations. This brings us to the last corner of the triangle. Now we're at the final bottom corner of the triangle. You can call this corner feeling or core emotions or adaptive affect or impulses. It's a key element of the triangle and what I try to help people access during therapy. These feelings are the true core of who we are. Again, if we look at a baby, it's all feeling, pure expression, rage, crying, love, giggling. There's no anxiety and no defenses. And there's something so charismatic and beautiful about this. If we can access this corner of the triangle, this is what gives color and depth to our life. This is key to vulnerability and closeness as well. Now you might be thinking, I don't want to be feeling all the time. I'm already depressed. I don't need any more of these emotions. And that's where you're wrong. Depression and anxiety come from living in the top two corners of the triangle. At some point in your life, you learned that emotions were not safe or okay to show. Maybe it started with anger. You were yelling and hitting as a kid, and you got punished. You learned, this is bad, if I do this, I'm bad. Pretty soon you just start to get anxious when you're actually mad. And because anxiety is so horrible, then you add in the defenses. This happens with sadness and fear, and you try to do this with basically every messy emotion until you're totally cut off from the bottom corner of the triangle. You think, I'm so good at living in the world, I'm so good at fitting in with what other people want of me. You've successfully adapted, and you have. You've adapted to the environment that you grew up in. But now you get to evaluate if this is still adaptive or if this is maladaptive for you as an adult. As you get older, you might start to realize how numb and disconnected you're feeling. And you wonder, what happened? No one ever explained this to you, so how could you have known? When you cut off messy emotions, all you're doing is stopping them from exiting your body. Instead, you keep them trapped and turned in on yourself. When your mom criticizes you, the natural reaction is anger, with an impulse for violence. But you can't have that. So instead, you stomach the anger. You become angry at yourself instead, which leads to shame. And instead of being violent or having that impulse, you direct that on yourself as well. So you think about hurting yourself rather than hurting someone else. On top of all this, the idea that you're only getting rid of messy emotions like anger or sadness or fear is totally untrue. Anger, passion, love, power, strength, all these come through the same emotional channels. If you stop one, you stop them all. Sadness, laughter, happiness, rest, serenity, they can all come together too. I'm kind of oversimplifying this, and it isn't always true that these come together. But the point is that if you lock away a messy emotion, you'll find that you're also losing good feelings without realizing it. Now you might think, if I start feeling more emotions, won't I start to punch holes in the wall or start crying all the times? This is where things get a little bit more complicated. When you think of an angry person who punches holes in the wall, it might seem like they're expressing affect, but they're actually acting out, which, if you remember, is an immature defense. In a way, they're actually being possessed by this maladaptive emotion and are oftentimes not really accessing those core emotions. For example, someone who punches a hole in the wall might actually be feeling hurt or scared or afraid with a partner, but because they can't express that core emotion, the feeling turns to intolerable anxiety, and then that's relieved by having a defense, like acting out with a more comfortable emotion like anger. However, this is sort of fake anger. You can tell because it doesn't go away quickly and it doesn't provide any sense of relief. This can get complicated, but you can always see if you're expressing a core emotion, a real emotion, or one of these fake emotions by if it comes and goes like a wave. And if it provides an internal sense of a weight being lifted or some sort of relief, then you can consider that a core emotion. Here are a few signs that you might be living in the top corners of the triangle and struggling with trapped emotions. Is it hard to feel sensations below the neck? Do your shoulders and neck and head feel tight? This is because you're cinching off the connection between your body and your head so that you don't feel all the emotions that you keep trapped in your body. Do you have trouble remembering your dreams? And is your memory of early child foggier than other people's? You could be cut off from your subconscious mind and your inner child because you don't have any place for the emotional content that comes with these memories and experiences. Do you feel paralyzed by shame and self-destructive thoughts? Do you have trouble dancing or doing any creative activity? Has it been months or years since you last cried? Are you someone who never gets angry? Is it hard for you to stand up to people? And are you always contorting yourself to fit into other people's expectations? If these sound familiar, you may be stuck in the top of the triangle. You may find it helpful to work on reopening a new pathway to this feeling corner. Now, this is no easy task. It can take a long time, and it can trigger an immense amount of anxiety, and you may worry that you'll go crazy or that you'll no longer be able to control your life. These are all normal thoughts to start having, actually. If you're serious about going down this path, you may want to discuss this topic with a mental health professional who works in experiential or affect-focused techniques. However, I can also give some general tips to begin exploring this new way of being. Now, unfortunately, this work of freeing trapped emotions isn't really something that you can do on your own. This began due to traumas in a relational context, and you need other people who feel supportive and safe to help provide those correctional experiences that can help you start processing emotions in a different way. That said, there are a few steps that you can start with on your own. First, you might want to start developing a habit of tuning in with your own body, noticing the sensations there. If you try now, you might be able to notice sensations like tightness in the neck and shoulders, tingling in the hands, heat in the stomach, pressure in the chest. Focus on the energy in your body, the temperature, the weight, the pressure, or any other sensations. This is a skill you can develop, but more importantly, it begins a valuable conversation between you and your body that you can keep throughout your life. Another important concept is alexithymia, or the inability to feel or articulate your emotional world. If you don't often talk about emotions, this can be something that's putting a big blind spot on your internal world. Alexithymia can often prevent progress in therapy because it leaves you feeling detached and alone in your own emotional world that you can't communicate to anyone else. This is a critical skill that can help you develop your communication about emotions, which in turn can help coax new feelings to the surface and provide relief for trapped emotions. It also allows you to have more of those valuable corrective experiences with other people that help undo and change the way that you process emotions. You can start by studying an emotional wheel like this one here. Notice which emotions are strong and familiar to you and which ones are more weak and mild. Try to think about this wheel on a daily basis, noting any rare emotions when you're experiencing them, and try and weave the vocabulary around emotions into your conversations with other people. Try to be more aware of any background emotions as well when you're scanning yourself. You may only notice anxiety, tension, stress, fatigue, as those sensations are often on the surface. But if you sit there for a while and go a little deeper, you might notice subtle feelings of sadness or anxiety, or sadness or anger that might be underlying that anxiety. You're allowed to make mistakes in this process, and you're allowed to guess, so don't let that stop you. Sometimes allowing yourself to soften and breathe into complex emotions can also bring feelings to the surface too. If this happens, give yourself permission to let the feelings come through. This can look like crying, laughing, even yelling. It's all okay if you're taking a curious and welcoming approach. Notice especially shame and self-attack. This is a very common issue for a lot of people and can even creep in around this kind of work. Remember, this is just anger that's turned inward, and you should note it without indulging in it. Getting even more frustrated with yourself can actually perpetuate this cycle of shame, so just try to soften your attitude by remaining curious and compassionate to yourself. You might worry or feel guilty about starting to feel anger towards other people that are close to you. This is also very normal. Remember that anger and love can come from the same place, and that by allowing yourself to feel anger, you learn to express anger in a mature and helpful way. And this allows you to stand up for yourself in relationships, which also allows you to have a deeper and more loving relationship. This same principle can be applied to all messy emotions like sadness, fear, and guilt. Just remember to find a mature and productive way of expressing these feelings with the people around you without hurting their feelings as well. You might start by saying, "I'd like to share more of my emotions with you because I think that will help us improve and deepen our relationship." Make sure you also name the emotion rather than acting it out. For example, you can say, "I've been noticing I start to feel anger when you bring up this topic. Can we explore that together? Hopefully we can find out what's going on." In summary, your first job is to start to build a relationship to your own internal world. Next, you want to begin sharing that new world with other people so that you can begin to learn that as an adult, emotions are now safe to express and experience in relationships. Again, this is work that has to be done with people that feel safe, stable, and supportive. If you don't have anyone like this, which is actually extremely common, consider seeking out a mental health professional or a group that would be helpful in processing this type of material. We started by talking about finding relief from anxiety and depression, and for anyone who's been trying to manage these issues unsuccessfully, I hope you can now start to see where the roots of these issues come from and appreciate that there's a lot more to be gained by working on a deeper psychological level. I also hope that you can use this framework for much more than that. When you begin freeing your trapped emotions, it can bring a new and beautiful vitality to your life. You can feel stronger, happier, more connected to the world around you, and more self-actualized. I hope that you can apply some of these ideas to your own life as well. If this type of video was interesting to you, please comment what you'd like to see more of and subscribe for more videos. Thank you.